Tonight is a wonderful opportunity to share some time with our city council member, Gary DeLong, who we are representing. I met Gary a few years ago when he was first elected to city council, was excited and pleased about that, saw the things he was doing. Then he was appointed to the Alameda Corridor Transportation Authority board. Well, I'm part of the staff there, and I really got to see Gary in action. Here is a guy who, any challenge, figures out immediately what's the key issue and how do I fix it, and it's done now. I really appreciate that. Gary takes action. He'll do that in Washington, too.
Thank you, Jim. First of all, thank you all very much for coming out this evening, and to Jim and Carol and the other co-hosts. I appreciate you lending your good names to encourage folks to come out and hear what I have to say. Hopefully you'll have some questions for me at the end. I'm going to make some brief remarks. What I'd like to do is tell you a little bit about me, for those of you who don't know me well, tell you a little bit about the district, what's happening here, talk about the campaign, and then why I'm running, if you'd like to know that. So I'm married, my wife Donna. We have 3 kids, 3 daughters. They range from college to first grade. It's college to kindergarten. Now it's college to first grade a couple of weeks ago. 3 good girls. Lived here in Long Beach for over 25 years. A local small business in the telecommunications industry. We're doing that for 35 years now. 10 years in corporate America, the last 25 years running this small business. I think I'm very concerned about the direction of our country. That's why I'm running. I'm really not one of those political people that have to run for another office. In fact, I was very satisfied to run for the city council, run for the 2nd term. I like term limits. Send me on my way. I've never had any interest in running for mayor or running for Sacramento or running for anything else. Don't need to look at the next seat. I know some of the politicians look at it that way. I never have. I'm kind of the person that believes that, yeah, you kind of come in from the farm, that's what it's supposed to be. You did a civic duty, and then you return. You didn't stay there forever. But I am concerned about the direction of our country. And I think about my oldest daughters. They're in college. One of them's at the USC Marshall School of Business, and she's going to graduate in a year. And I think about it, I say, well, what is her economic opportunities going to be when she graduates? And I remember what mine were. I went to college many years ago. Had a little student debt when I graduated. My parents didn't have the financial wherewithal, so I had to pay for it myself while I was working full-time. Had a little debt, not like the kids today, they might have tens of thousands of debt, in some cases over 100,000 of debt. So in the first couple of years, I paid it back. Was employed by AT&T a couple of months before I graduated, found some gainful employment. At the bottom of the ladder, it didn't start in the middle of the top, you start at the bottom, and then you worked hard, you worked your way up. But there are economic opportunities. If you worked hard and had some common sense, you could do well. And I did fairly well in my first decade, working for AT&T and Security Pacific Bank and Carter Hawley Hale stores, and then going off in small business enterprises, joining a couple of people that had started a company a few years before that and bought out the founders in the 90s. When I think about my girls, where are they going to work when they graduate from college? My wife and I are looking forward to them moving off on their own and being off dad's door. I can tell you it's virtually guaranteed they won't have a job lined up the day they graduate, a job that's commensurate with their skills and ability and education. It's 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. These are good kids, so they're going to do well. They're hard workers. They're going to find a spot. They've made the right decisions in life. But it's going to take a while. And then I think about it, so what will their first decade look like? For the economy, might have a noble cause, but it's bad for the economy, then we need to look at it next year, or the year after. Doesn't mean it's a bad idea, it just means that today, now, is not the time to go in that direction. We need to postpone. So there's a lot of things I could talk to you about. Let me tell you a little bit about the race, and then I'd be happy to take some questions and go whatever avenue you'd like to. There's lots of subjects, healthcare, Social Security, and all sorts of things we can check out. This is a new district. This was created out of redistricting. It's the 47th Congressional District. It's 58% in Los Angeles County. Long Beach is 53%. The other 5% is Avalon, Catalina, Signal Hill, and a portion of Lakewood. It's 42% in Orange County. Communities of Rossmore, Los Alamitos, Cypress, portions of Westminster, Stanton, Garden Grove, and Point Park. Candidly, it's what redistricting was supposed to create. It's this very competitive seat. It's not a Republican seat. It's not a Democrat seat. It's a very moderate seat. Now, when you look at who comes out to vote, it's known as lean Democrats. 42% of registered voters are Democrats, 38% of registered voters are Republicans, 20% are declined to state independents. It's a very competitive seat, and candidly, the first time around, it's going to be won or lost by 1 or 2 points. But that's what makes it interesting. Certainly makes me get up earlier and stay up a little bit later and work a little bit harder. So at the end of the day, you're going to win or lose by a very small amount, and you're committed to winning this race. So what can I answer? What's on your minds? And I'll call on you if I have to.
This is going back to it, just because I don't think any of us have to know how the vote came down on the apartment, the high apartment, hotel. Yeah, Seaport, when I know that you didn't go along with it, and I don't know, we didn't, I don't think I read or heard.
Sure, well, it was the second NPCH project that was voted down by the council 5-3 last December. I tell you, the biggest problem with the vote wasn't whether it was voted yes or no. The biggest problem is there was no effort to compromise. Our system is based on compromise. Now, what we should have done, in my opinion, is if there wasn't a majority vote to support the project as proposed, then we should have counted on it. We should have said, look, there's some community concern about that 12-story building. We'll do 6, but not 12. There's community concern about the amount of traffic, so we're going to cut the project 15%. You're going to lose this much retail, this many hotel rooms. And then go back to the developer and say, that's what we can do. And then the landowner can look at that and say, well, it doesn't pencil out, we're not interested. That's fine, that's your right. But they look at it and say, well, you know what, that's still a viable project. We'll take your offer and move forward. We did not do that. They just simply voted no. And it was shocking to me, because I was watching the discussion and the questions by my colleagues, and you can kind of tell how something's going to go based on the questions. And to see that it got voted down 5-3 by some people that did not even ask a question. So you voted no, and you didn't even ask a question. You didn't even say, would you go to 4 stories? Would you go to 6? Would you do this? Would you do that? Not even a question, you voted no. I think that's wrong. I think the city did a disservice to the process by merely saying, no, we should have made an effort. We might not have ended up with a project, but we should have made an effort to compromise. And I'll tell you, in my opinion, next to the economy, the #1 problem we have in both Washington and Sacramento on a regular basis is the inability to compromise, the inability to work together, the inability to get things done. That's what the status of that project is. And just to give you a caveat, so we talked about this today in a neighborhood meeting, so as a result, the landowner now has a project going through the channels, I think it's about 240,000 square feet retail, conforms to the zoning, no variances, going to be that 2-story project, no height issues, going to be the 30% public status, everything's great. Except it's really not a very good project. But we're not willing to work with it, we're not willing to compromise. So the community is going to lose because we actually would have been better off with a mixed-use project. Project had a little hotel, had a little residential, had some, some entertainment, had a little retail. That would have been a better project for the community. We could end up, we'll try not to, we could end up with a strip mall because we didn't work together and try and come up with a solution.
The financial cliff is often discussed, and we all know what the implied ramifications of that if it comes about. What is your insight as to what your thoughts are on what positions you would take, or what actions you would take to avoid it?
I will. So the fiscal cliff is really related to 2 things. It's sequestration and sequestration. Right? It says since they didn't cut the budget, here's what's going to happen, and then very devastating cuts there. About 50% comes out of the military. The other cuts are dramatic as well. And then the second thing that will happen is that they can't reach consensus on continuing the current tax rates. The tax rates are going to increase on everyone. So that'll be devastating on both ends. We're going to have these draconian cuts as opposed to thoughtful, intelligent cuts. We're going to have some draconian cuts in certain areas. And I would tell you that increasing taxes, while it might seem good to say, well, we have new revenue, it'll be terrible for the economy. Our economy is anemic. So why would we want to do anything whatsoever to have a negative impact on our economy? So things will change dramatically for the worse if that happens. Hopefully it won't. Hopefully they'll come up with some compromise. But it does not look optimistic at the moment, although I have a little faith and a little optimism that they will figure out the end. It will be significant if they do not reach a compromise.
how many years ago, about 25% of our jobs were in manufacturing, and now it's about half.
And declining.
And declining. What do you think we can do to bring back a manufacturing aspect of our economy?
First thing I would do is I would talk to the senior executives of those businesses and ask that question, what have we done to push you out of state, push you out of country? What can we do so that you'll keep your good jobs here? And they'll have a list. They'll have a list of regulations. Say, well, I'll tell you what really killed us was this one. I can know there's some businesses in the port, I won't mention which one it is, but they're looking at moving. And if they have to move the existing business, they can't stay in the United States. It needs to go offshore because in the new regulatory environment, they could not run that business profitably. They have to take it offshore. So either they need to, depending on the regulation, says, let us continue to run the business the way we do. We're just going to move from here in the port to there in the port area. We'll stay in business. But if we have to go current, then those jobs are leaving. And so are the revenues. Not good for us. But I think you need to work with industry. Again, I think we want to be positive environmentally, but you need to work with industry. Now, I'll give you another example. A couple of years ago, when AT&T and T-Mobile were looking at a merger, they were going to the FCC, and what the FCC was trying to do is kind of twist their arm and say, well, we approve this deal, which they did not. But if we approve, we can bring your call center jobs back in the country, back offshore. And while a little horse trading is fine, I think that's absolutely the wrong question to ask. But I would rather say, what do we need to do so that you would willingly bring your jobs back in this country? And then we could figure that out, and it's not just AT&T, but it's AT&T, it's Dell, it's Microsoft, it's everybody else that's going to bring their jobs back to the U.S. as opposed to fixed in one particular incident. But most elected officials that have no private sector background don't understand.
Gary, what do you think about, let me just give you an example, NEPA. So, I'm the president of
I was explaining NEPA is,
the National Environmental Protection. So I'm the president, I've got to create jobs. So we're going to do public works. Lo and behold, I find out there are no shovel-ready jobs. Why is it? You take a look at it, and many mega projects are being held in advance because they're under environmental challenge. Sterling Bridge started out in 2003. It was about a $750 million project. Now it's gone through, at this point, 9 years of environmental reviews before it gets to the point, the starting point, which is that's now. It's now $1.2 billion.
And growing.
And growing. To replace a bridge.
Yes.
That had to be replaced because the old one was falling apart.
So they were replaced 10 years ago.
Absolutely. So what are you going to do about NEPA?
So NEPA is the federal equivalent of what's we know in California, CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act. There's a great editorial in the paper a couple months ago now by Governors Davis, Majan, and Wilson. These governors did, Democrats and Republicans, they talked about how CEQA, when it was originally established, it had very good intentions to do things environmentally. We all agree with that. But part of the CEQA and the avenues is to extort money. So if you're a firm, you go to the port in Long Beach, you say, or LA, and you say, I'm going to oppose your project, and you're going to receive one. Say, okay, well, that's going to cost $500,000, $1 million, or $2 million to fight. And you start the court process, and they say, on the other hand, you could just write us $1 million check, and since it's going to cost you $2 million in legal fees, and we'll go away, and you can move your project forward. The court's a business. Look at it and say, well, we'll save $1 million, and we can get going tomorrow. Seems like a good deal. We should take it. So these companies are using that as one, which is many examples. But you look at things like NEPA and CEQA, they are killing our economy. It's not just private development. There's any government development that doesn't have to be quasi government. It's terrible. So I think, Jim, this is going to go back. Again, we don't want to go back to the Stone Ages. But I think we ought to look at what part of it actually serves the public well, and what is just adds cost, adds bureaucracy, and provide any meaningful value that is costless. You need to eliminate some of that stuff. And I'm happy to say, look, maybe there was a good reason or a good thought on that, but it didn't work out. It had negative, unintended consequences. We know the third force law. Can't we now respond and say, okay, had we known then what we know now, we would never have done this? Well, it is now, and we do know it. So we need to repeal and roll out, not just stopping new regulations, but we need to look at regulations we're going to have tremendous negative impacts on our economy, and we need to pull it back, at least for a period of time.
What I see is that legislatively, we do not pay enough attention to the unintended consequences. Every single piece of legislation has it. The recent abolition of redevelopment in the state basically was going to be a big savior for the state's budget. It turned out to be a very small amount of money, almost insignificant.
And we told them
wiped out every city and county.
We told him that. Yep. It was never, what he's referring to is that the government said if you cancel the development agency, there'll be $1.something billion that would come in. Well, it's barely in the hundreds of millions of dollars. It's nowhere near the $1 billion that they anticipated. But it will cost our economy billions and billions and billions of economic impact over the next decade or two. And we may not feel it tomorrow, may not feel it a year from tomorrow, but 5 years from now, when all those projects that could have been done, that aren't done, that's when cities and counties are going to see tremendous negative repercussions. Here in the city of Long Beach, we've used redevelopment agency money extraordinarily. We've done a number of things with that money. It's a tremendous economic impact, particularly in challenging areas. And not only we go over the Black Hole of Sacramento, I have called him, voted to kill him. He only passed by a couple of votes, and he voted to kill him, and he knew. He didn't city council. He knew what the devastating impact would be, not just in Long Beach, but throughout the district. And that's one of the reasons, I'm not a nice guy, but it's one of the reasons I have 3 Democrat mayors, I'm a Republican. I have 3 Democrat mayors that endorsed my campaign because they are furious over somebody that would put a party, ours of a party did, but he would put a party as ahead of their interest, and they're furious with him. There's no end. Layoffs and just massive public projects that did not be pulled down due to the lack of funding. When Jim talks about long-term consequences, right, because you really suffer 5, 10, more years down the road, I'll also tell you that we will have the same problem in our education system. In the last 2 years, the state legislature has cut the California University budget by 30%. 30%, or $1 billion out of $3 billion. There's a couple cuts to the UC system. They're down 30% of community colleges. They're decimating our K-12. And one of the things that we've had Long Beach do is that outstanding public school system, which helps us, not only does it give us an educated workforce, but it's one of the reasons people like us to move or live in Long Beach, is because we have high quality schools. If that changes, this community will have significant problems in 15, 20 years from now. If families don't want to move here because we don't have a good school system, that'll be very challenging for all of us to live here. If you like on, I'm sure that the state Senate Education Committee. He and I got in a debate a few weeks ago, and I brought this issue. He said, education was a party that had to take their fair share. Fair share? Show me something else in the state that's been cut 30%. We certainly haven't cut pensions 30%. You don't have 30% for your employees. I mean, if you look at the growth of the state government, you didn't cut any of that 30%. Instead, you cut our kids and our grandkids' education. You cut our future. And that's terrible.
Yes, there's so much emphasis, as well should be, that we want our kids to go to college. But there are kids that really aren't college material. And they've taken away all of the shop classes from all of the schools. And, you know, there may come a day where you're going to call for a plumber and you're going to have to wait in line because there's only one plumber to serve, you know, the next 10 people.
Well, not only that, but I'll argue those are pretty good jobs. Maybe that's maybe a plumber, electrician, or take the car. We should not get into nation building in other nations, particularly if you look at our economy, if you look at our deficit, if you look at the challenges we have in our home front. I do think we need to take care of all this. Healthcare?
Yeah.
Healthcare.
Okay, quick question. In reading some of the stuff on the press telegram, it's stating that you are in favor of Obamacare, but there are aspects that you'd like to see tweaked or repealed or whatever. Can you get into some detail on that?
Well, favor is a strong word, but the question was, do I think Obamacare should be repealed? Well, actually, let me back up. Let me give you a microphone. What do we want for healthcare changes? So we do want changes. The existing system is not working as well. I think there's 3 things that we want. We want improved access. Ideally, we'd like everybody to have access to the healthcare system. We certainly want it to be more affordable and more cost-effective. I mean, it's expensive and getting more expensive all the time. Double-digit rate increase, particularly cents came in, that does not reduce costs, it's increasing. And we want to maintain or improve the quality of care. So if you look at it, you got to say whether it be Obamacare or any other healthcare legislation, if you look at it under those three, in my mind, principle. So how did Obamacare do? Did it increase access? I think you could make an argument. I think have kids until they're 26, get a health insurance plan. You can't discriminate for a pre-existing condition. So there were things in there that improved access. Does it reduce the cost of health care? Absolutely not. Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office says it's going to add $1.8 trillion in cost for our healthcare system. We don't need to pay for it. So that's going to dramatically increase the cost of our healthcare. And the third is, does it maintain and improve the quality of healthcare? And I think that's very arguable as well. I think as I talk to physicians and healthcare administrative providers and so forth, they're telling me the exact opposite. They're very concerned about their ability to provide services on a going-forward basis. And they don't think that this legislation really fixed any of the core systemic problems. But to your question, I don't support repealing it for two reasons. One, it's not going to happen. You are not going to get the Senate and the House to agree on health care as long as there's two parties, and I see two parties, one having one and one having the other for a extended period of time. So we can fight about it, we can mudsling, we can argue, it's not going to be repealed. And I'm a very pragmatic person, so I'm more interested in saying, well, what can we do to fix it, to make it better, as opposed to let's fight that fight one more time. Is it voted to repeal it 37 times, let's do it 38th time. That doesn't serve any of us well in this room. I think repeal and replace, that's a potential, but I think the train is left the station. It's going to be hard to do that. So I think what we got to do is we got to look at the major problems with it, and we got to fix those. We got to help.
Gary, something that's always puzzled me, and I'm never been able to come up with a rationale. Why is it that you can't buy health insurance across state?
That's crazy.
Which would seem to me to increase competition.
Absolutely.
Drive costs down. Why is that a non-starter?
Yeah, there are a number of things. That's on my list. You absolutely should be able to buy health insurance across state lines. The only caveat that we point out to you guys from doctors is if you're a California doctor and there's an issue with the insurance company, they don't want to be able to talk to the California Department of Insurance. They don't have to talk to the Vermont and Texas and New Mexico Department of Insurance. So let it out of state insurance companies. They need to be able to work through a California system. And I think that's reasonable. I think we should be able to expand the use of health savings accounts. So if you're retired and you're purchasing health insurance, why isn't that a tax write-off? I mean, if you're employed, the employer writes it off. But if you're not currently employed, you're purchasing health insurance, why wouldn't that be a tax write-off? If you want people to have health insurance, which we do, then we need to make it as affordable and as cost-effective as we possibly can. There also needs to be significant tort reform in the system. There are enormous amounts of frivolous lawsuits that go on today. If you look at the cost that doctors pay, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for malpractice insurance, not only is it the cost of the insurance, but then they need to charge you in your care to make sure that they're recovering their costs. So let's say we can't bring that insurance cost. But the other thing they do, and they'll tell you up front, is 25 to 40% of the prescriptions and the tests they do are unnecessary. Well, they're unnecessary for your health. They're very necessary to make sure they don't get sued. They need to do that. Because you could be that 1 in a 10,000th case that they didn't describe that treatment, and you sue them, and you win, and now they're bankrupt, and more financial problems. So they're going to prescribe that test 10,000 times, whether you need it or not, just to make sure that they defend themselves. So we have a defensive medicine which is not working. So we absolutely need to do some tort reform in the medical care system.
I have a quick question. I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to the foreign policy.
Absolutely.
Which country, my concern is, which country hates us? And if it's Afghanistan, if we don't stay there and we pull out, the Taliban takes over, are we back to square one? Is that what you were talking about?
No, I wasn't referring to Afghanistan. I'm talking about some of the other Middle Eastern countries. I mean, we fund almost everybody. Our list is very long. We're not very discriminatory about who we fund and who we don't fund. Egypt's not we're not held high in Egyptians' perspective these days. So there's a number of countries that I think you would be shocked at how much money, how many hundreds of millions of dollars we're giving them for what? Afghanistan is not what I was thinking, although I do think we need to have we need to move out of there as quickly as we can, leave the stable cover behind. We can't run that place forever. It's not going to work.
But what would happen, well, my concern would be when the Taliban comes back in.
Well, hopefully we leave them on sure footing, that they have a democracy going, but then they need to take it. We can't be there 20 years, can't be there 30 years. We need to exit from there at some point.
Gary, we seem to be stuck on the belief that democracy is right for everybody. And that everybody aspires.
And our version of democracy.
Everybody aspires to have the kind of democracy that we have. What has become increasingly obvious to me, that's not true.
Cultures are different.
But we're spending a lot of money trying to make it true.
And we'll never make it. No matter how much money you invest, there will be certain parts of the world that, like you say, they have a different perspective, a different outlook. Their needs are different from ours. A square peg does not fit the round hole.
Call it political missionaries.
With money we don't have.
Right.
With money we don't have. But certainly when there is a general popular movement that they do in democracy, should we be supportive? I think we should. But yes, we shouldn't go in and try to rewrite someone's culture. That's not going to be effective.
What's your position on the oil exploration in the U.S.?
Well, a couple of things. First of all is I do support additional exploration in the U.S. I think we should do it. I think we should do it environmentally friendly. All right, so you don't do it like you did it 50 years ago. And I guess the best example I would give you of industry is the Port of Long Beach. I support modernizing the port. I support expanding the port. And the port does everything today in a very green, environmentally friendly way. But we absolutely should support that industry. I see an analogy in oil and gas. The Port of Long Beach can do it. We can do it in a profitable manner in the oil and gas industry as well. But again, there should be appropriate safeguards, not input, not secret, not a bunch of regulations that have tons of dollars and don't provide any benefits. But you should be able to move forward. I will tell you, not only from an economic perspective, but is it absolutely in our country's best interest to reduce our dependence on foreign oil. We can act in our own interest when we're not dependent on others. It is not healthy for us to have the huge reliance that we do today. Yes, Karen.
Why are pharmaceutical companies such sacred cows that they can charge the rates they do for prescriptions or for drugs compared to what you can get them for in Mexico or Canada?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, let me say, my approach on everything is there are no sacred cows.
Is what?
There are no sacred cows in my mind.
Well,
Right? They certainly had it today, and I think there will be many examples in the federal government if you peel back and look at the lobbyists, look at the advocacy efforts, and look at the bills that were passed that favor. In fact, I would tell you, I'll answer your question, but I would tell you, when I say that I don't equate raising revenue with raising taxes, one thing I would do is I would aggressively go after loopholes. Special pieces of legislation that were written to benefit one company or one unique industry segment or something that really doesn't do anything for everyone, but was explicitly written for them. And you can see it, because there's this bill that was written, and then at the very end, there's a paragraph that takes care of this entity over here. It's like, well, that wasn't part of the bill. Who stuck that in and why? And I do think we should go through all those, and that's going to make you unpopular in some front. We should aggressively go after those, and I can't see raising revenue that way. I don't see that as raising taxes. Some would call it raising taxes because those entities will pay more taxes, but that's not across the board. And I think you have to look at the pharmaceutical industry and say, why are we doing what we're doing? Maybe it made sense in the beginning, but that was a number of years ago. Maybe it helped to get off the ground with new drugs. But today it doesn't make sense. It needs to be updated. It needs to be modernized. We should look at all those things.
especially when you consider the donut role.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I agree.
One thing that concerns me about some pharmaceuticals do concern me because I think a lot of them are coming from China, and we don't know what is really in the medications that we're taking. Do you have a comment on that?
I'm not familiar with that. I guess I perhaps naively assume that the FDA is doing a good job regulating those things, but perhaps not. That's not an issue that we're simply not familiar with.
Yeah, the counterfeiting of pharmaceuticals, it's only because in the printing industry, which is my industry, there's trying to be new technologies with identifying when it's coming through ports, they're scanning it, they're putting DNA and inks on boxes now to identify if something is is legitimate or if it's a counterfeit, because the counterfeit is huge.
Well, it sounds like we're doing some things, but perhaps we should be doing more.
But private industry is doing something about it, which once again is a nice thing.
I bet they are.
Yes, we've seen a problem and we're trying to fix it, so, you know.
Gary, one of the issues that came up recently during the financial crisis was this too big to fail concept. As we stand today, that issue is still there.
But I think in my
It
opinion,
concerns me for our grandkids because I see the size of some of these financial institutions, and it won't take much for them to topple over. And the impact of those things would be tremendous. So the question is, have you given some thought to how that can be broken down? You know, can we reinstall that glass ceiling? Is that a possibility, or what are your thoughts on that?
sure, thank you for that question. Well, a couple of things. First of all, as you can tell me, I'm a pro-economy, a pro-business person. I think that's pretty clear. That's my background. But in my opinion, I'll give it to you very simple. Too big to fail is too big. You shouldn't be too big to fail.
What are you going to do about it?
I think you need what is Glass-Steagall, which was done in 1933 after the Great Depression. That was a law that put in that separated merchant banking and stocks and so forth from traditional banking, and then they took that down 15 years ago and pulled it apart during deregulation. I don't know that you absolutely recreate Glass-Steagall, but you should do something similar to that. Nobody should be too big to fail. If you're too big to fail, you're too big. I think you can raise capital requirements. And by raising the capital requirement on those financial institutions, that will shrink them. They'll become smaller. So I think there's a number of approaches you can take, but you do want to do it in a way that makes it an easy transition to get to their new size, so you don't have negative consequences. But too big to fail is too big. I think it should. Again, never having been in Washington, I can't tell you I know all the ins and outs of how this would occur, but I would tell you that would certainly be a direction that I would head. Too big to fail is too big. Particularly, we are a capitalistic environment, and what it says is, you know, if things go well, you get the upside, and if things don't go well, you get the downside, and your shareholders do. Too big to fail means that you can gamble, and if things go well, you get all the profits. If things don't go well, then the government bails you out. How is that fair? How is that fair to us? We didn't get the upside. Why do we own the downside? It's wrong. And it's not what our system is based on. That's not how it's supposed to work. And one of the problems, the unintended consequences, if there's no downside liability for your bad behavior, you tend to be hit poorly. Because you just have upside. You don't have any downsides. We need to fix that.
Gary, is there a committee or a subcommittee that you have in mind?
There's a few. Certainly, in this region, goods movement is tremendously important to the region and the region's economy. We have the ports as well as other things. So I would like to be on the transportation committee. That would probably be my number one goal. Secondly, you know, it's not very sexy, but I would love to be on the budget committee. You know, and one of the things I've learned in government as well as the private sector is, you know, he or she that knows where all the money is and how the finance works and all the money, they know how to get things done. I've been the chair of the city's budget oversight committee for the last 6 years, and I've always had the ability to figure out the budget and what needs to change and what needs to get there. And certainly need to work with your colleagues and the mayor and everybody else, but the person that controls the purse strings tends to have the greatest impact on the outcome. So I'm very interested in being on the budget committee. Energy and